I continued with a few questions for the Maharshi. What meditation will help me? No meditation on any kind of object is helpful. You must learn to realize the subject and object as one. In meditating on an object, whether concrete or abstract, you are destroying the sense of oneness and creating duality. Meditate on what you are in reality. Try to realize that the body is not you. The emotions are not you. The intellect is not you. When all these are still, you will find what? You will discover. It is not for me to say what any individual experience will be. It will reveal itself. Hold to that. But in trying to still the mind, I am likely to fall asleep. It does not matter. Put yourself into the condition as in deep sleep. Then watch. Be asleep consciously instead of unconsciously. There will be then only one consciousness. As the days passed, I saw more and more clearly that this was no theoretical philosophy. The Maharshi himself lived it continuously and joyously. He was one of the few I have met who were not only happy, but untroubled. Not that the sorrows of the world left him untouched. On the contrary, but he knew where they belonged and was not identified with them. To any sufferer, his compassion was unlimited. One day, a man rushed in and flung himself face down before the Maharshi in a paroxysm of weeping. Great sobs tore his body. The Maharshi said nothing, and no one else did either. I watched the Maharshi. His head was turned aside, and he seemed indifferent. After some time, the violence of the man's grief subsided, and gradually he became quiet. Still no one spoke. Then, at last, the man rose reverently and made a deep salutation. Maharshi turned his head and smiled upon him. I felt suddenly as if all the flowers of the world had poured their fragrance into our midst. Another time, a poor creature had been bitten by a cobra and was brought in and laid before the Maharshi. We all watched, fear gripping our hearts, but not so he, who sat looking into the far distance while the victim writhed in pain. Calm and compassion was in that look, and infinite peace. After what seemed like hours, the twitching ceased, and the man appeared to sleep. Then the one who had brought in the sufferer gently touched him. The man rose, prostrated himself before the Maharshi, and went out cured. But this was unusual. The Maharshi did not heal, at least in the accepted term of the word. Talking about it one day, I asked him if one could use spiritual power for healing. And the Maharshi said, "Yes, if you think it worthwhile." But then he added that it required a great deal of force which might be used more profitably in other directions. I was told that the Maharshi had his finger on the pulse of the whole ashram. For instance, when in the hall, he was supposed to know what was going on, even in the kitchen. And incidentally, I was surprised to find that he himself assisted in the cutting up of the vegetables for the daily meal. I was also told that he knew what was passing in the minds of people. Of this latter ability, I had a small, direct experience. It was in the afternoon, and I was in the far corner of the hall, reading the translation of a collection of aphorisms written into me a flowery and artificial vein, and I was bored and slightly irritated. Suddenly, one of the devotees stood before me with another book in his hand. You see, all the ashram books were bound in brown paper and looked exactly alike, and the devotee said, "The Maharshi asked me to give you this. He thinks it will be more sympathetic to your type of mind." It was. How could the Maharshi know what I was reading? I was sitting far away with many people in between us, blocking his line of vision. But I had previously noticed that many times he would answer a question in my mind, whilst it was only in the process of being formulated. This happened too often to be a coincidence. Every experience has to end, and the last day of my visit arrived, and with it a great sadness filled my heart. I must go back to worries, problems, and imitations, the mind said. And here all was peace. Here it was comparatively easy to live in the mood of the spirit. Is this why so many holy people retire to solitude? I wondered. Is it only in conditions such as these that the hidden verities emerge from under the covering of distractions? Still, all of us cannot follow such a life. Is the answer to live in the world, if we must, but not be of the world? There was nothing new in the idea. Yet in this ashram, in this space, I seemed to understand it for the first time. That afternoon, I had my farewell talk with the Maharshi. He was so gentle and human. We discussed the difficulties of everyday life and mundane problems. I asked again about the relation of the body to the I, and he gave this simile. You came up from the bungalow this morning in a cart, yet you do not say, the cart came up. You say, I came up. You did not make the mistake of identifying yourself with the cart. In the same way, look upon your body as you do the cart. Treat it well, and it will be a good servant and instrument. But do not be deceived into thinking it is I. He again stressed the necessity to see only the self in everything, saying, act automatically and let it do the work, and it always will. Do not look for results. Do what is right in the given moment and leave it behind you. At the end of our talk, he quoted that wonderful saying from the Upanishads. Unto the man who understands, the self has become all things. What sorrow, what trouble can there be to him who has once beheld this unity? As I went to say goodbye in the evening, the ashram people clustered around in sympathy for my departure. I felt I had made and was leaving true friends. They were so simple and yet so genuine. There was a service taking place in the adjoining temple, and an old Sanskrit hymn was being chanted. Just as I stepped into the cart, the temple bell rang. This brought a smile of happiness on everyone's face, because apparently to hear a temple gong in the act of departure is a wonderful omen and brings peace. As I left Tiruvannamalai in the dawn of the next morning, I caught a last glimpse of Arunachala, the holy mountain, on which lives one as the one of the saints of earth. The mountain was red and glowing in the rising sun, and I wept.